Good evening. Thank you for Students to Justice in Palestine and International House for having us here. And it's an honor to share this platform with Professor Salaita, Professor Leiter, Bassem Tamimi, who's come from Palestine and just yesterday, and who in a few moments will remind us of the things we're not supposed to talk about. A great deal went through my mind listening to Stephen. His moral clarity, his passion, his civility, really qualities that have always been visible in his work, and it is such a travesty, Stephen, that you have been subjected to such vilification and slander and defamation. Is everyone feeling comfortable? Very important that nobody feels uncomfortable. A few days ago, Phyllis Wise, the Chancellor of the University of Illinois, gave an interview in the Daily Illini, where she was asked about the situation relating to Stephen Salaita, and particularly the role of donors in her decision. And she said the following. She talked about how she had been getting emails from both sides to hire Salaita, or I'm so glad you didn't hire Salaita. And I went back, and I never went back to check who those people were who were emailing me. I never went back and checked whether they had been a donor or whether they were possibly going to be a donor, whether we were talking with them already about a possible gift. As the state contributes less and less towards our overall budget, it becomes critical that we find other sources. Otherwise, it's going to be on tuition, and we already know how high tuition is. So I'm looking for different sources of revenue, and whether it is corporate donations or philanthropy from foundations or individuals, I'm always out there telling our story. The decision about Salaita was a purely personnel decision. It had nothing to do with specifically the Palestine or Israel issue. I would have taken the same action. I hope I would have used more consultation, but I would have taken the same action if it was someone who was for Israel as someone who was for Palestine. It's difficult to, I would need an hour, and I won't take that, I promise, to unpack all the lies, all the fabrications, all the conceits packed into that paragraph from Chancellor Wise. I can tell you in summary what we do know already. From the work that journalists have done, from work which I've been pursuing, from Freedom of Information Act requests, which is that from the very moment that anti-Palestinian websites and faculty and others began to agitate about Stephen Salaita's tweets, Chancellor Wise was running around like a headless chicken to meet with big pro-Israel donors, particularly here in Chicago, to hear what they had to say about Stephen Salaita. We know that because Chancellor Wise herself wrote emails reporting on some of those meetings. Emails that she didn't send to the chair of the American Indian Studies Department. She barely communicated with those who had actually made the decision to hire Stephen Salaita based on their scholarship and knowledge. She was in communication with, now, when I was in college, the euphemism was development, the development office. Now they've come up with a new word, institutional advancement. So she was in touch with the institutional advancement stuff, meaning the fundraisers. And she, without going into all the details, she went to enormous efforts to change her schedule to come to Chicago to meet with Steve Miller, one of the donors Stephen mentioned, a major donor, a board member of the Jewish Federation of Chicago, certainly the most active and powerful pro-Israel lobby group in Chicago. And we know that she had had meetings in the days after the attack on Salaita began in the press with other major donors. One of those donors, whose name we have not confirmed yet, actually gave her a document. She wrote in one of her emails, reporting on that meeting, she said, of the unnamed donor, he said that he knows redacted and redacted well, and both have less loyalty for Illinois because of their perception of anti-Semitism. He gave me a 2-pager filled with information on Stephen Salaita and said how we handle this situation will be very telling. She wrote that to the top fundraisers on July 24th. This was just a few days before Stephen received a letter from the university telling him that the position he had been hired for had evaporated just like that. Now, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for this 2-pager given to Chancellor Wise by a major pro-Israel donor. And guess what? The university couldn't find it. They said no such record could be located. This is despite the fact, as Chancellor Wise well knows, that any document that touches her hand when she is performing her official functions becomes as property of the state and a public record. She knows this. It's university policy, it's the law of the state of Illinois. So right there you have prima facie evidence of a cover-up, and I'm pursuing it with a request filed to the Public Access Counselor at the Illinois Attorney General's office to ask for review of their response to my Freedom of Information Act request and the claim that this document has gone missing. But I think this is only the tip of the iceberg. Stephen mentioned when I cornered, well, it was an interview, I had proper press credentials. The President Robert Easter, and his story was absolutely contradictory. I won't go into the details about that. But I asked him another question, which I think is at the heart of this matter, and which Stephen's profound and moving words reminded me. I asked President Easter, what's worse, Israel's killing of more than 500 children in Gaza, or Stephen Salaita's tweets about it? And that was the moment that the university official, one of the PR staff, stepped in and he said, "That's enough, you're not acting like a journalist." You can see the video online. While I'm sure, and we will continue to pursue the facts about this case, and if any of you have information, I urge you to come forward and help the Electronic Intifada with its inquiries. We will continue to try to get to the bottom of this case as other journalists are doing. And I don't know how Stephen will proceed, but certainly if there is litigation, I'm certain that more information will come out that way. And it's important that we know the truth. But this is about donors, as much as the university denies it. It is about pro-Israel donors, as much as the university denies it. But it is not just about donors. We have to put this into two broader contexts. The first, certainly, is the corporatization and neoliberalism that is at the heart of what is happening in all universities, including the University of Chicago. It's not a coincidence that Chancellor Wise mentioned the corporate and philanthropic foundations that she's hoping will fund the university in an era of state retrenchment. It's not a coincidence that at a time when she is opposing, she's on record opposing unionization of faculty who are seeing their security and their wages and their benefits diminish. These are the people in the front line of teaching, the ones in the classroom helping shape the minds of the future. She opposes unionization for them, so the attack on them can continue, while she collects a corporate-style salary. I'm not singling her out, this is true at all the universities now, of more than $500,000 in public funds. And in addition to that, she receives $300,000 a year in consulting fees from Nike Corporation. I have no idea what wisdom or expertise Chancellor Phyllis Wise provides to Nike Corporation. A colleague of mine suggested today that in the interests of transparency, Wise should be required to wear a Nike swish at all times. Now, that's one context that I just want to signal. The other, of course, is the broader attack on the Palestine solidarity movement that is going on across this country and in which the university is the front line. In my book, The Battle for Justice in Palestine, I talk about this attack, this war on campus, and how key pro-Israel lobby groups like the David Project have said in their own internal strategy documents that the future of the US-Israel relationship will be decided on campuses. And what this means, they say, what they argue, is that campuses are hotbeds, this is the David Project, of concern for human rights, for marginalized voices, for the ethos of the United Nations, and other ideas that are inimical and dangerous to support for Israel. And they actually identify as positive trends for Israel the corporatization of higher education, the growth of private for-profit education, which is less concerned about politics and more concerned about vocational skills. And business schools in particular are growing at the expense of the humanities as a trend that is positive for Israel. And this fits into the much broader right-wing attack on higher education in this country, which dates back to the era of Ronald Reagan. And they also say, they also talk about the kinds of tactics that are to be used at a very specific level. So, for example, I quote the David Project saying, "In the long term, efforts must be made to limit the ability of faculty members to use their positions to propagandize against the Jewish state." And there's a whole set of strategies they propose for that. But while that ramps up, they say this: in the interim, accusing faculty members who propagandize against Israel of academic malpractice is likely to be a much more effective strategy than challenging specific allegations or invoking anti-Jewish bigotry. Rightly or wrongly, I mean, they go on. In the interests of time, I'll summarize. The point here is that, as we've seen this with Stephen Salaita and other cases, this claim that he would be harming students in the classroom based on no evidence whatsoever, a completely slanderous and defamatory claim, is part of a strategy to question the competence of teachers whose political views don't fit with the agenda that they're pushing.